A new report claims that West Midlands Police used intelligence about Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters to ban them from coming to a game at Aston Villa, which Dutch law enforcement says was false. In November 2024, Israelis were targeted and attacked when Maccabi Tel Aviv travelled for a match against Ajax in Amsterdam after some messages on social media called for a Jew hunt. 4 people were jailed for their part in those attacks. The Times says false intelligence about the events in Amsterdam was central to a decision to ban Israeli fans from attending the Europa League match between Aston Villa and Maccabi Tel Aviv on November the 6th of this year. Dutch police have publicly stated that key allegations attributed to them, including claims about mass violence, links to the IDF, and the need to deploy 5,000 officers, were not accurate. These questions raise significant issues about policing decisions, the reliability of intelligence, and the implications for future fixtures. Joining me to discuss the details is UKLFI Charitable Trust Legal Director Natasha Hausdorff. Natasha, what do you make of these revelations?
Thank you, David. I think it's extremely important that they are coming out and that this very troubling decision is not forgotten. It's remarkable that it seems that these false allegations, supposedly intelligence upon which it is now reported that this decision to ban away fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv from attending this match, that decision was predicated on these false allegations, only appears to have now come out on the basis of some remarks that were made to the Jewish community in Birmingham at a meeting. And when one considers how controversial this decision was and how much scrutiny it was originally subject to, it is utterly remarkable that this would not have come out sooner. Now, in amongst that scrutiny, of course, we had the press reports, we had a review of the decision before the match took place by Simon Foster, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner, and including parliamentary committees, in particular a letter from the Home Affairs Committee on the 4th of November, so before the match was due to take place, asking of Simon Foster, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, what assessment had been made by West Midlands Police of the disorder in Amsterdam in November 2024 in that football match or surrounding that football match. So in that context, really extraordinary that these false claims had not come out sooner. And as you indicated, the suggestion that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans had thrown passers-by into the river, or indeed had concertedly attacked in their hundreds Muslim communities, it is not only abjectly false, it is an inversion of what actually occurred. We know that it was at least one Maccabi Tel Aviv fan that was thrown into the river, and he was not permitted to get out of it until he proclaimed something like Free Palestine. The videos of those incidents were circulating the very night of those attacks on social media. And we know that there was, as some have called, a pogrom that was planned in advance and organised on various social media groups, including WhatsApp, to specifically target and attack these Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. So this inversion, and if you will, projection that we are seeing, is very troubling indeed, because it seems to be part of a pattern. Part of a pattern where Jews and Israelis are concerned, that the very crimes that have been committed against them are weaponized and they are accused of committing them themselves. The fact that this projection and these false allegations seems to have played such a significant role in this decision-making process, which was utterly unprecedented, to ban a group essentially predicated on their ethnicity, or some have said religion, given that many fans are of Jewish origin. Of course, the fact of the matter is that there are Israeli Arabs and Muslims that support Maccabi Tel Aviv also, because some of its players come from that community. Nevertheless, the fact that this has now been aired is significant, and one would hope that Simon Foster and others would take these issues extremely seriously, to the extent that the police commissioner responsible needs to see consequences if this is made out.
And what have official reports in Holland actually had to say about this?
Well, this is the other extraordinary element of this saga. The fact that as early as May 2025 and thereafter in June 2025, so before this decision is taken, there are publicly available reports that looked in detail at what had occurred in Amsterdam in November 2024. The first of these reports is compiled by COT, the Institute for Safety and Crisis Management, which is a specialized agency in this field of security and crisis management, that provided an analysis of what had occurred and the response thereto, and also a report from May 2025 by the Justice and Security Inspectorate, which is part of the Ministry of Justice and Security in the Netherlands. And when one looks at these reports, in particular, some of the terminology that have been used to document what occurred in November 2024. Phrases like hit and run attack, which it defines as a form of attack in which a group of rioters deliberately attempts to isolate individuals from another group, physically attacks them, and then retreats back to their own group. And also a flash attack, a form of hit and run, in which individuals or small groups move quickly through an area to attack individual opponents. That is the terminology used in this report. Both of those examples we saw immediately on social media footage, as I referenced, but are also chronicled in these detailed reports that focused, I will accept, on the police's response in this latter report, and found that in the circumstances they had done a relatively decent job of seeking to respond to what they considered to be an unexpected level of violence. But it's critical that the false allegations against the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans are simply not borne out by the reports that were publicly available at this stage. One reference which I thought was particularly striking, and I confess I'd forgotten the relevance of this to the November 2024 match date. The report by the ministry actually refers to the start of the Kristallnacht commemoration at 6:30 p.m. that evening, and notes that while previous commemorations have been peaceful, given the current sentiment, there is a risk of disruption. So while it's clear that there was an anticipation of issues ultimately surrounding Jewish attendees at a football match and Jewish attendees at a commemoration of Kristallnacht, another pogrom targeting Jews, the level of violence that was meted out to these Maccabi fans was perhaps not expected on that occasion. It may therefore well have been expected in the context of the Birmingham match. All the more reason, one would think, for the police to take their responsibilities very seriously and address where this violence would have been expected from. To have, again, done the inverse of this is inexcusable, and to have done so on the basis of entirely fabricated, false, and now we see also inverted reports of the violence that occurred in 2024 is somewhat mind-boggling.
And Natasha, there appeared to be a difference in the way two groups of protesters were policed on the night of the actual game at Aston Villa, with pro-Israeli supporters penned in and unable to move freely, whereas pro-Palestinian supporters had gathered there to vent their fury at Israel and the IDF, and they were not subjected to the same restrictions.
Well, this reflects, doesn't it, David, continued concerns that have been voiced over this phenomenon of two-tier policing, which arguably the decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from attending the event as a whole is an extreme example of. But the manner in which these gatherings were treated outside of the stadium is also a fair representation of that. And there were indeed a number of members of the press and also members of parliament that highlighted what was occurring, including chants of just genocidal chants supporting the eradication of the state of Israel. And all of this was, of course, directed at the participation of this Israeli team in this football match. It's important perhaps to stress something that UK Lawyers for Israel raised very early on with Aston Villa, the club, and that is the responsibilities that organisations and also public bodies have under the Equalities Act. So when UKLFI wrote, it raised the concern of direct discrimination against Israelis, which is prohibited under Section 29(1) of the 2010 Equalities Act. It highlighted that there is no get out clause for discrimination on safety grounds. So even if these false allegations had been made out, that would not be a legitimate enough reason to take such a discriminatory step. So under Section 29(1), the Act prohibits a provider of a service to the public or a section of the public, and in this case that would have been the holding of this football match, from discriminating because of nationality against persons seeking the service by not providing them with the service. And so that issue of how equalities law plays into that is also significant. But the problems that you raise, and you're not alone in that, in terms of the approach that the police have been taking to the policing of these sorts of hate marches that were threatened should Maccabi Tel Aviv fans attend the match, and that clearly materialized even in their absence to promote, in some cases, support of Hamas, but quite broadly, one can see from the reporting around the stadium, to promote a genocidal ideology against the state of Israel.
And Natasha, there has been a lot of criticism since these claims of false intelligence. Lord Walney is among those saying that if true, the position of Chief Constable Craig Guilford is surely untenable. What should happen?
Well, this is perhaps primarily a matter for the Police and Crime Commissioner to consider. I noted that he had conducted a supposedly detailed review of the decision before the match was in fact held. But it is extremely concerning. And the fact that we are seeing additional questions in Parliament and additional scrutiny and pressure on a decision that was taken on such a false premise, on a false basis, is pretty significant. Who knows if it will serve as a warning for future decisions, but I think it is important that there be a full inquiry into how, first of all, the decision itself could have been taken, but secondly, it could have been predicated on false information, which was entirely contradicted by the publicly available reports of the relevant ministry and also the Institute for Safety and Crisis Management in the Netherlands.